On October 7, 2023, Hamas terrorists with the backing of Iran brutally and savagely tortured and murdered over 1,200 Israelis, mostly civilians, the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. This barbaric act of terror against the Jewish state has ironically set off an even more heightened global climate of Jewish hate and anti-Semitism, where Hamas, the perpetrator, is conveniently now the victim, and Israel is the monster. Heard this story before? Sure you have. Blame the Jews. Blame Israel. This as millions of disinformed and misinformed anti-Israel, anti-Semitic protesters take to the streets, the universities, social media to denounce Jews and Israel. The fact of the matter is, even prior to October 7th, Jews were the most targeted minority for hate crimes, more so than all other minorities combined. Don't take my word for it, just check the stats. Why do millions continue to condemn the Jews in the aftermath of October 7th without knowing the true history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, without knowing just how much Israel has tried in good faith over the past few decades to broker peace with the Palestinians and the Arab world? Anyone who has studied factual history, well, they know that Israel has desperately tried to find a two-state solution, giving land for peace and almost everything else so that Palestinians could have a state of their own. Palestinians deserve a better way of life. They must have a better way of life where Palestinians control their own destiny, have sovereignty, human rights, civil rights, a thriving society. The problem is Hamas, with the backing of Iran, controls the Palestinians, and the Palestinians, they back Hamas. And Hamas and Iran have one goal: to eliminate the state of Israel, to rid the world of Jews. End of story. The same goal the Nazis had: kill all the Jews. The truth is, Israel is not the oppressor of the Palestinian people. Hamas is the oppressor, as was Mahmoud Abbas and his Fatah leadership, as was Yasser Arafat and his PLO, as is Iran. For the record, the US and the European Union combined give billions of dollars to the Palestinian Authority to help their people every year. The Palestinian Authority and Hamas do not use the majority of that money to build things like schools, daycare centers, tech hubs, roads, bridges, medical clinics, hospitals, colleges, universities, basically a society. They tragically choose to spend much of the dollars on weapons to kill Jews and Israelis. They spend money on an intricate underground concrete maze of tunnels and bunkers. Hamas spends that money underground, not above ground, for their own suffering Palestinian people that they have imprisoned. Money on a tunnel system that has been in part placed beneath existing schools and hospitals over the years, using children and the sick and the elderly as shields. An unconventional satanic strategy of warfare from Iran-backed Hamas targeting Israel. And what is Israel asking for from Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, the Arab world, that is so heinous, so monstrous? What is the unfathomable ask that has the delicate sensibilities of so many Jew haters going crazy these days? That request: to simply recognize the Jewish state so Israel can live in peace with its neighbors and have a future. Yeah. What a terrible and horrific ask on the part of Israel. How dare the Jewish state hope for a safe and secure coexistence with the Palestinians? How dare Israel ask that Hamas and the Arab world promise not to exterminate the Jews and Israel in return for a Palestinian state? What an unconscionable thing to ask for: peace. And yet some radical liberal universities continue to teach hate against Israel, and the Jews continue to weaponize impressionable students with the false narrative of oppressor versus the oppressed. These young people, really people of all ages today, sadly, they continue to believe this false narrative with all the phony photos, the phony videos, the fabricated stories, the erroneous data that are posted on social media demonizing the Jews and Israel. And the radical liberal mainstream media, which these days, let's be honest, comprises much of the media, continues to deceive the public into believing that Israel is a devil. Take, for example, MSNBC, CNN, BBC, the New York Times, Washington Post. Some of the activist news hosts and writers there continue to spew lies as they interview guests who collectively continue the dishonest progressive narrative that Israel is the root cause of the conflict today, where Israel is the occupier of what they claim is an apartheid state, an occupied land of Israel, land that is not Israelis, that is Palestinians, where Israel has kicked out Palestinians from Palestinian land, and Israel has claimed said land for their own. Nothing could be further from the truth. Any honest scholar, historian, journalists of Middle East histories, Israeli-Palestinian relations, they know that historically and geopolitically, Israel is the original land of the Jews. Jews were kicked off their land for thousands of years. Here's an analogy for all the Jew-hating radical progressives and the anti-Israel clan. How ironic that here in the U.S., Columbus Day has basically been renamed Indigenous Peoples Day. This after many liberals and progressives, politicians and others, insist that the United States stole this American land centuries ago, and the U.S. is an occupier of a land that originally belonged to and is today belonging to the Native American people, the Indians, the indigenous people, who were really here first, and it's their land. So if that's the case, if that's their argument, why is this same logic from the liberals and progressives not applied to Israel? The Jews were on their land first. So where is the outrage from the liberals and the progressives when, over centuries, the Persians, the Romans, the Arabs, the Palestinians violently occupied what was once the original homeland of the Israelites, and the Jews were forced out of their land, exiled from their home? Thus the diaspora of Jews, of people just simply trying to find somewhere in the world to survive, to exist without being killed just for being Jewish. A world that in part has tried to destroy the Jews with inquisitions, pogroms, the Holocaust, and now Hamas and Iran. So now Israel and the Jews say, never again. Israel must have some assurance that the Jewish state, the Jewish people, won't be destroyed. And let's not be hypocritical. Let's not have a set of rules for Israel and another set of rules for everyone else. Let's not have a double standard, which is constantly the case where Israel is concerned. And yet the mainstream media continues to perpetuate the false narrative that Israel has illegally occupied the land, constantly interviewing radical progressive politicians like Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, AOC, the Squad, and so on, coupled with the liberal mainstream media consistently interviewing other Democrat politicians who seemingly hate Israel, or interviewing coastal elite radical progressive journalists who never ever defended Israel, no matter what the dire situation, have constantly written negatively about Israeli leadership, whether in op-eds or news columns. And these journalists, they know who they are. This Jew-hating tribunal for years has been adding fuel to an out-of-control, rabid wildfire that is scorching the earth today. Israel deserves better. Innocent Palestinians deserve better. Tell that to Hamas. So with this said, I went back into the David Nazar News archive so I could share with you just a part of my PBS interview from a few years ago when I spoke with world-renowned Rabbi Marvin Heyer of the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles, California.
Many people around the world take it for granted that what we have is about 10, 20, or 30,000 fanatics around the world. These are people that are members of ISIS, they're members of Al-Qaeda, and these are the people we have to worry about. That is not true. There is a Pew study where the Pew study tells us the sad fact. According to this study in 2015, 7% of the world's 1.6 billion Muslims, 7%, sympathize with the idea of suicide attacks and fighting in that manner against innocent civilians. That would amount to about 112 million people. If we have 112 million people that side with the jihadists, that is a world catastrophe. And that has to be highlighted. And the overwhelming majority of Muslims in the world reject that, do not want that kind of a philosophy. Nonetheless, they must take this as a challenge, and they must do everything they can to put down this 7% that can endanger the future of all of mankind.
Your Simon Wiesenthal Center, your Museum of Tolerance, has dedicated its existence to the human rights of not just Jews, but to the human rights of all. How does one walk the fine line in being sensitive to the needs of Muslims, but also saying we need to fight radical Islamic terrorism?
By telling the truth, that that's the way it is. The Muslim Brotherhood nearly destroyed Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood is in charge of Gaza because Gaza is Hamas. Hamas is dedicated to the destruction of the state of Israel. That must be faced. They're not only a danger to some local city, they are a danger to all of mankind.
Thanks for being part of David Nazar News. Let me know your opinion. Your voice is vital.